Hello, I'm Ladora Striblin, the U.S. Campus Recruitment Manager, and I will be your moderator. Welcome to the Adapt and Rise Unique Ways of Working in a New World webinar, hosted by Genpact Campus Recruitment Team. This is the first of the series of webinars that we are hosting. Our next webinar will be in 2 weeks on how Genpact is building business resilience. We are so excited you all have chosen to join us on today. We will give a couple of minutes for folks to join the session. In the meantime, we ask that you all participate in our fun poll that is displayed. Please take 60 seconds to make your selection, and then we will share the results. So here's a sneak peek at the result. Looks like most of you all are in your pajamas. Thanks for keeping it honest with us.
We could all go change to get in our pajamas as well.
Hey, maybe some of us have business on top, PJs on bottoms. I'll be honest, I do. All right, so before I introduce our two speakers, I would like to just cover a few housekeeping rules for today. Everyone is muted for best audio quality. We want to keep this interactive, so we have put together some poll questions. There are two types of polls. We have polls, just like the one we use, that will be displayed on the screen. We will also use some fun technology, Menti.com. So please have your phone or computer handy. You can go to Menti.com, and once we're doing these surveys or the polls, the instructions on how to access those polls will be displayed on the screen. We also invite your comments and questions. Please look at the Q&A chat box on your screen. If you think of a question for the speakers at any point, just type it in there, and we will address as many questions as possible during our Q&A time at the end of the session. We also will send a post survey. We would love to have your feedback on our webinar. Now to jump into our session, we have two phenomenal leaders, Melissa and Gianni. Melissa is our global hiring leader at Genpact. She has over 20 years of experience, and she is full of energy and expertise. Gianni is our chief innovation leader. Along with scientists at MIT, he spearheads research in human AI network and collective intelligence, and how it shapes the future of work. We are super excited that these leaders have taken out the time to share with us today. Now I would like to hand it over to Melissa.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to our first webinar in this series, and I hopefully that this will pique your attention so you will come back in a couple of weeks and visit us again. So as Ladora said, I'm a recruiting leader here at Genpact. And I hope everyone is safe and sound during this extremely unusual time in our world's history. I know for me, it feels like Groundhog Day every day. So looking forward to the days when I can get back to my normal life as well. I'm super excited today to introduce Genpact to you, who we are and what we do. And then Gianni is going to be covering new ways of working, how to adapt and rise, and why and what you should be learning about. You might think once you're done with college that your learning days are over, but I can guarantee you after hearing from Gianni, you're going to find that continuing to be curious is extremely important. And lastly, we're going to talk about interview tips in this virtual world. Obviously, not a lot of in-person things are happening right now. And I'm going to share some things and items that I always look for when I'm interviewing potential candidates, and also share some tricks for things that you can do to ensure that you have a successful interview. And then, of course, at the end, as Ladora stated, we're always going to leave time for questions and answers. So Genpact is a global professional services firm, and we're based out of New York, and we make business transformation real. What we're doing today is we're driving digitally led innovation and digitally enabled intelligent operations for our clients, guided by our experience running thousands of processes, primarily for the Fortune 500 companies. We think with design, we dream in digital, and we solve problems with data and analytics. But you might ask, where did we come from? So Genpact actually began in 1997 as a captive business unit within General Electric, or GE as you might know them. And in January of 2005, we became an independent company to bring our process expertise and our unique DNA and lean management to clients beyond GE. And then in August of 2007, we actually became a publicly traded company. We used to be known for our business processing outsource work, but now we've grown into a firm focused on business transformation, including the use of digital and analytics to drive that transformation. Also, as artificial intelligence is becoming more common, Genpact is disrupting itself again by leveraging digital and growing into these value-added services. And just to give you an idea on how fast we've grown, and I went back and was checking my stats yesterday. So in December of 2005, we had 19,000 employees, and we had an annual revenue of $491 million. And if you fast forward that to 6 months ago in December of 2019, we have more than 90,000 plus employees in more than 100 offices across 32 countries, and we serve more than 800 clients. And about 1/3 of those are sitting in the Fortune 500. So over the past 2 decades, we've acquired a deep industry domain expertise. And the one thing that you want to note about us is we only desire to focus on certain industries. And you might ask yourself why. This is because we want to be the experts in those industries that we've selected. So we want to know their business better than anybody else. And you can get a full list of those industries that we focus on, but some of those by going to our website, but some of those are banking and capital markets, insurance, consumer goods, retail, life sciences, industrial, and high-tech companies. So those are the areas that we focus on, so we're the best at what we do. Another piece that differentiates us is in 2009, we launched a smart enterprise processing, which is a process framework. And what this does for us, this has significantly improved our business processes for client companies. And in particular, leading industry analyst firm IDC has found that Genpact's SEP methodology to be unique and extremely valuable way for companies to drive their processes effectiveness and achieve measurable business impact, which is key. We leverage best practices and proprietary benchmarking data to deliver these proven results across the industries and key business processes. In addition to that, we know that there's lots of different ways to grow an organization. And we've also done that through acquisitions and bringing in different people with different types of intelligence into our company. So over the years, we've brought in P&M Soft, which is a dynamic workflow platform to Genpact. We've brought in another company called Risk Canvas, which basically brings the next generation of financial crime technology to Genpact for us to utilize with our clients. And the latest one was Brightpoint, which creates positive human interaction to drive meaningful business outcomes. Very, very unique company, very, very interesting company to do some research on. And in addition to that, you might think that consulting companies, we're on our own and we don't partner, but we actually partner with a lot of different firms out there. To name a few that you guys might be aware of being in the STEM program, Blue Prism is one, Canaxis. Interesting enough, we also partner with a company called Deloitte, which you all might have heard of. So a lot of different ways to grow your company and to grow your business. Moving on, I wanted to show you guys a really cool video, and I know Gianni would have liked this, on Envision Virgin Racing Team and how we're using AI and advanced analytics to make real-time decisions. But we were a little bit afraid of the technology and switching back and forth, so we're going to try to include that on our next webinar. So in lieu of that, I want to encourage you to go into our website and look at the white papers and the videos and the things that we've been doing with our clients, so you can get a better understanding of what Genpact does on a day-to-day basis. Some of the things you'll find on there, like I just said, was the Envision e-racing series, white papers that we've done with SodaStream and transforming their global processing and their future-proofing their operations. Ciox Health and how we redesign their medical information management, just to name a few. So really go in there to dig deeper about Genpact and how we've helped our clients. This is my favorite, one of my favorite slides, besides talking to you about interviewing at the end of this, is our culture. And being in the corporate world for the last 20 years, I have to tell you that I love Genpact's culture. And they are true to what they say they're going to do. And there's 4 things that we really like to look for when we interview people. And those 4 are on the screen. One is curious. Gianni will talk to you a lot about that today. We want people who want to come in and shake us up, challenge what we talk about, challenge the way we do things. The second one is incisive. We want individuals that can make decisions. It's okay to fail as long as we're failing fast and we're getting back on track and we're moving on to our next project. People who are courageous, people who want to stand up for things that they will believe in and doing things a different way, and they fight for that. And what the platform that all of it sits on, and I can tell you this, is integrity. I've never been at a company in the last 20 years that has more integrity than this company. So we hold each of our employees and the team to all of these standards because our biggest asset and our key differentiator is the capability of our people. And these traits make us who we are, and they're really the key to our success with our clients. And with that, I want to turn it over to Gianni, our Chief Innovation Officer at Genpact.
Thanks, Melissa, and welcome everyone. Hope everybody is safe and things are going well. Apart from the PJs, I guess the other problem that we all have is the haircut. So as you see, I do struggle with that too. But hey, at some point we'll manage to get a proper haircut done. One thing I wanted to go do right off the bat is to have you use that Menti application to get a sense from you, and I guess the team can do that now. If I hope that that's possible. So yeah, so go to menti.com, use that code 228095. And then the question is, what skills do you think are important in getting the work done as we work alongside technology in this new future of work? Okay? So you can see the question on the screen. And just write down what you think the skills are. Some of you are coming out of a university, MBA, or whatever you have, or you've been in the workforce for some time. Just write down what you think will get you there. Right? What is important to learn at this point in time? Just give it a couple of minutes. I want to see people's opinions. Right. Keep going. This is interesting. You can actually, I think you can vote multiple times as well. If you have opinions, just put them in. All right, let's give it another 5 seconds or so, and then we'll read what this says. Okay. So 50 or so of you have voted, almost 60 now. So let's give it another 2-3 seconds, and then let's look at what this says. Very good. Okay, so let's have a look at this, because I want to talk about that in a moment. This is right? So what you want to do is indeed not focus on just the hard skills, but really things that we call soft skills, but fundamentally are related to how people work with each other. So innovation, indeed, there are a number of practices, a number of techniques that you probably have some experience with, but as you enter the workforce, you'll do a lot more of. Clearly that's the kind of work that humans will do in the future as we work alongside machines. The innovation side of the story is still going to be a human precinct for quite some time. All the other things that you see here, from critical thinking to communication to adaptability to curiosity to empathy to adaptability, again, it's emotional intelligence. Those are all things that, if you think about it, point at one thing, that humans work with other humans, and as we do that, we achieve what we need to achieve, which very often is problem solving, innovation, and whatnot. And I think that's right. Even if we think about schools, data science, digital technologies of various types, at the end of the day, what really will make a difference, obviously on top of those things, is your ability to stay interoperable with other humans. Obviously, you will need to learn how to work with machines, but if you want to do proper problem solving, it will be interoperability with humans that will get you there. So maybe we go to the next page, and I wanted to show you a little bit of a derivation. I think probably you need to go one back, Lidora. The page with the neural net with the 3 dots. Yeah, that one. So just build it out completely. So part of the work that I do is actually working at MIT. So separately from my Genpact work, I'm head of innovation design at the Center for Collective Intelligence at MIT. One of the things that the Center for Collective Intelligence does is that it looks at how to design organizational structures that are not our grandfather's organizational structures. So really moving beyond people sitting in an office, moving beyond pure hierarchies. What is the future of work going to look like? And that future of work is where you're going to spend a lot of time, right? I am also going to spend a lot of time. And so when I work in our lab, so we have a design lab, we look at 4 types of things that need to be done. And those are the ones that are here on this page. So there are 4 pillars to a future-ready workforce. That, when you put them together, they result in collective intelligence. And that collective intelligence obviously makes enterprise more resilient, more powerful, more innovative. But if you look at it from your standpoint, those are the macro areas that you really want to focus time on. First of all, you come in with a certain amount of pre-existing abilities, things that you're really good at, things that you have learned in the past, and things that you have passion for. The next level up, though, and this is where we spend a lot of time at Genpact, is the learning. You need to continue to learn all the time. Compared to maybe even my generation, and certainly the generation before, our work life is going to be a continuous learning effort. And so we spend a lot of time and money and time and executive time, like mine. I am part of our executive management team, but I also lead our learning transformation. So learning is hugely important. It's going to be a part of your daily routine. And then there's a targeted enablement component of the story, which is literally at the point of need. When you will need to do things, there will be knowledge repositories or machines that can help you do your job more easily. Again, that needs to be done deliberately, because in these large networks of people working together, hierarchies are less strong. Quality control is not just done by your supervisor. Maybe you have 2 or 3 supervisors. Maybe you have none, right, in certain cases. So targeting enablement is important. And even more important in the end is one of the things that I think you highlighted before, the connection and collaboration between people. So this work from home environment in which we are all living in has exposed the inability of many of our colleagues, not in Genpact, but I think in general, many people in the workforce have been thrown off kilter because they were largely only able to work from an office. Yes, they can do phone calls. Yes, they can send emails, but that's not real collaboration, right? And the reality is, in the last 7 weeks, 8 weeks, I think we have tasted a little bit of a foretaste of what the future is going to be. So this 4 set of skills really give us an opportunity. I think it's a one in a generation opportunity to change how we work. And so a lot of this work is happening at MIT. I have brought a lot of that into Genpact. And this is how we design the workplace at Genpact. And we do also that for our clients. Many of our clients are large organizations that are not used to work like this. So quite a few of them, quite a few of our colleagues in our clients' organizations are struggling right now. And so it's important that we are able to get everybody back to work this way. Now, the beauty of this is, if you do this well, it is going to be a very diverse and global world with a number of people, many people that you would have never met if you were just working in an office close to where you live. And that will make us better. That will make diversity of ideas generate more innovative ideas. So I'm going to move into the skills and the kind of things that you need to do to get that done well. If you're interested in this topic and you want to go beyond what I just talked about, have a look at the website called www.supermind.design, as in supermind, as a bigger mind.design. And you'll actually see what I'm talking about, and there's quite a lot of detail if you have the appetite to do that. But that is the future of work. So Lidora, if you can actually go to the next page. So what we try to do at Genpact is to take care of our people in their learning journey. So what you see here is a subset of the skills that we put into our curriculum. And this is what we think is important for people who come into the company. And as they stay with the company, they learn and they go beyond what they were hired for. So there are 4 categories. As you see, the red ones are professional skills. The kind of things that we talked about before, the ability to work with each other, the ability to influence others, and really listen well. Then industry skills. Melissa talked about the fact that we want to be experts in what we do. I think the time has gone in which people could be generalists and talk about anything. It's important to have a certain amount of domain expertise, as well as service lines. So service lines are the ones in gray. So for example, life science, consumer goods, etc. The order management and whatnot. I think the color coding was changed. And then digital and analytics. Yeah, so you want to learn Python, that's great. It is one of the components that will make us smart. So just stay with this page for probably 10 seconds or so. Just have a look at the breadth. I think one thing that is really important is it is a very varied bunch of things that we need to learn. You know, some of us were brought up in a period, I think probably, you know, in the 80s, in which we had to be, or in 90s really, when we started working, we had to be super specialized in one place. Now, being an expert in something is quite important, but you really want to have enough of the ability to translate many different jargons and concepts from other fields. So for example, if you're a Lean and Six Sigma expert today, you work on business process design, well, part of what you do is to interoperate with people who are subject matter experts. The other thing that you do is to design experiences and use experience design and design thinking to create human-centered experiences. All those skills are quite different from each other. Right? Storytelling is another very important one, but you need to master them all. Right? Not at the same level, you'll not be an expert at all of them, but it's important that you create some range in what you do. And this is actually one of the things that we really invest a significant amount of time and resources at Genpact to get our people to embrace. So maybe you go to the next slide, Lidora. So what I wanted to talk about, there are 4 set of things for you to succeed in the collaboration environment that is necessary in this new world of work. And again, I'd like you not to take this for granted, because even for us who have been in business for some time, we had very global, you know, very varied, very complicated jobs for many years. The new world of work is complicated. I've been working in a semi-remote or certainly very highly networked environment for probably 15 years now, with all sorts of technologies, and thankfully by now we have technologies that really get the job done. So I'm going to take you through some of my learnings. So the first thing that you want to do is to focus on managing yourself. So if you look at this page, there are five categories. First, deliberately manage your energy and mood and take care of yourself. Your habits will end up changing in these times and might get you to lose things like walking, natural light, you know, the small talk, daily routines like, you know, personal grooming. Hey, you know, I managed to, you know, cut my hair maybe once in a while now. But we all need to have some element of rhythm and rituals. Those things are not for kicks. They really give humans the ability to walk through their day. So calendar them and make them stick, right? Pay attention to those patterns of your life and make sure that you don't lose them just because, you know, yeah, pajama pants are good, but, you know, maybe at some point you want to dress up a little bit because it makes you feel different, or you want to put your running shoes on, or whatever you like. Try to create a rhythm in your day, right? Also pay attention to the ergonomics of your working space. So you probably see I'm working standing. I've actually been working standing for many years. Sitting too much, if you're in your home office, is a bad thing. It's bad for a number of things. So, you know, posture, what your working space looks like. Do you stay hunched on a small screen? All that kind of things is important. Number one. Number two, disciplines, rules, and working hours. Normal routines may end up being disrupted. The reality is you need more structure when you work at home than when you're at work. At work, there's some structure that is put on you. So use calendar entries more. Use your Outlook calendar to actually prompt you to do things, right? Prompt you to think things. Ensure that you plan more and spend more productive time with your colleagues in the right meetings. Don't just have meetings. You know, meetings are, you know, beyond the point. We have too many of them. But you really need to find a place to have quality time with your colleagues. Cadence yourself. Also know that the temptation to get some slack time seeping to your daily routines can lead to real sudden drops of performance. You need to have downtime. You need to make space for it, but you want to be deliberate about it, right? So make sure that, for example, enterprise social media, Slack, Teams chats, etc., don't end up addicting you, okay? So deliberately choose. Third point, family time out as opposed to time in, lunch or dinner breaks, and time for exercise. Some people say that work from home has now become live at work. The reality is that this separation is very tedious, right? You may be sitting on the same couch on which you watch Netflix and do your work. So the flip side of the discipline and rules is that you need time for yourself. So for some people, there's a risk that work really gets into everything you do. At every point of the week, you work from spaces that should be sanctuaries, places that you want to keep separate from your work. So for example, really try not to work from your bedroom, or try to work not on your bed, right? Because that will interfere with the kind of things that you want to do in your bed, right? Which is sleeping and other things you may want to do. So health and productivity come together. The fourth aspect is language. So working remotely requires that you monitor your language and optimize it even more than when you were in the office. That's because others will not see your body language, right? So you really want to make an effort to make sure that when relying on non-video communications, for example, asynchronous things like, again, Teams, etc., consider prefacing some of your messages what I call assume a positive intent language, and use emoticons, for example, to convey the appropriate emotions. I mean, for many of you, this is probably obvious. You're the kind of generation that grew up with emoticons, but you will see that a bunch of people in the workplace, always consider emoticons something that is for teenagers, and it's actually quite important to use the language properly. The last thing is follow information security and data privacy rules. Cyber threats and compliance threats are real now. So think about what happened with Zoom. We use Zoom because we think it's a phenomenal experience, but if you don't use Zoom properly, you end up with a number of circumstances like Zoom bombing, etc. So just pay attention to those things. Now, I'd like to launch a poll here. So if Lidora, you can actually bring up the next poll. I'd like you to respond, very transparently and honestly to the question that's being posed now. Which of these have you done regularly in virtual interactions? These are the same things I just talked about, but I want to hear from you, how much of that have you done in the past? And I'd like to understand which ones are less natural for people to do. So multiple choice, just put down the things that you've done consistently. Right. Keep going, another 2-3 seconds, and then we'll read what the results are. Good. So most of you have done about half of those consistently, which means you just discovered a way of acquiring some superpowers, right? So being aware of the things that you don't do is actually the road to being a better version of yourself. So Lidora, if you go to the next page, I'd like to talk about managing teams. Some of you manage teams, some of you will manage teams. Even if you don't manage teams and you're part of a team, it's actually quite useful to understand how your team lead thinks about the world of work in this situation. So first of all, be aware of your tendencies and counter them if needed, particularly on 2 dimensions. Are you wary or trusting? Or are you close or reserved and distant? For those of you who end up being naturally wary and reserved, you may initially struggle with remote teams interactions because in-person settings mitigate your tendency to keep to yourself. Keep that in check and create routines that help you overcome that so that people don't feel that you're distant just because that's your tendency, but it doesn't mean that you don't mean well. So pay attention of, are you wary or trusting? Are you close or distant? Or close or reserved? Are you close or open? So trust is probably the most important thing that we have in this environment. Most people feared that as we went into lockdown, the trust that makes people be able to work with each other would be eroded. So now it is even higher. So the trust level is even higher when you work remotely. So be explicit and consistent about what it takes to gain and lose trust and the implications of it. Manage activities, for example, meetings or trust building activities, not just the transactional work. So really think about what you do to rejuvenate that trust level in your team. People who lose trust in a virtual environment can get in real trouble because you really, at some point, the network disowns you. So in fact, functional work can often happen remote as well or even better than if you were to do it in person, as long as you know the tools, obviously. But trust building remotely or partially remotely is not a trivial thing to achieve. So your team needs to trust you. In a virtual environment, that depends even more than always on, first of all, you're being helpful in a time of need. 2, being fair and consistent in judgment. And 3, being authentic, so that people feel the human part of you. Obviously, you don't want that authenticity to trespass into, judgments or things that are unpalatable to, very often you have a global audience or very diverse groups, etc. But those 3 are super important: being helpful, being fair and consistent, and being authentic. People will trust you if you do that. Number 3, feedback and disciplinary actions, as in feedback and management teams is part of management. So be supportive of people who need to get up to speed and be fair, but also be swift and resolute. Otherwise, in global teams, in groups that won't work together anymore, some people feel, okay, it's okay to tolerate underperformance, or it's okay to tolerate, really neglect. It is not okay. Our company is a very inclusive company, but we also are a performance-oriented company. So obviously working from home is work, right? It's not vacation time. And as we see, most people actually work from home very, very diligently. So there's probably going to be a few people who struggle with working from home, and they need to have some support and some guidance. So feedback, when you give feedback on through virtual tools, that's not a second nature to many people. And so virtual tools, as I said before, when I was talking about language, may make sentences feel a little harsh. So avoid just going by instinct and read about how to do it properly. There's quite a lot of guidance out there on how to do it properly. Rituals. So rituals are, as we said before, you need a rhythm. And rituals create a rhythm. Agile project management, for example, agile management has quite a lot of rituals, but they can also establish you can also establish things like happy hours, virtual water cooler hours, etc. As long as you are genuine in what you're trying to do, and that thing is not conceit, they are quite helpful. And rituals help connect with the team in a more deliberate way, not just I just bump into somebody in a corridor. These days, you don't have corridors anymore. So if you lead large teams or global teams and organizations, you must create a network that connects independently from you as well. So ensure that people working for you also try to connect in a very disciplined way, both formally and informally. So they do cover each other in moments of need, and they don't just rely on you. 5, goal settings. Goal settings need to be more explicit. So use things like Microsoft Planner, for example, Trello, anything you like to actually establish what the output is. You really don't want to judge by input. You really want to judge by output, right? Thankfully, work from home, hopefully it will kill, the old joke that people left the office, but they left the jacket at the back of their seats so that, everybody thought that they were still working at late hours in the day. Hopefully that thing is gone. So goal settings is important. And part of this is also to give people structure. But also part of it is to keep people informed of delays that may affect everyone. So you really want to make sure that those goals are transparent. The last thing is pay attention to culture. Pay more attention than before. What you do as a team and how you do it and how you communicate around it and how you support the formation of habits is what creates culture. And cultures creates trust, because it brings people together in a somewhat tribal way, but in a positively tribal way, where people have each other's back. And so virtual civility also is particularly important now. So I want to do what I did before. So Lidor, I've actually run a survey, and I'd like to ask you again, which one of these 6 things have you done systematically in the past? So Lidor, if you can actually bring up the poll. Yeah, go ahead and vote on this. Be keen to see what you say here. Okay, maybe 2 seconds more and then we close on this one. Right, okay. So you're aware of your tendency in a virtual environment. This is actually what most people say. This is really good, right? Being self-aware is really important when we work with people. When you work with machines, it's less important. You know, we're gonna work with people for a long time. And you see things like, for example, use rituals is, and I agree with you, is not normal, right? You know, normal work environment, there's rituals for you. You know, you meet in the morning, you go to lunch together, you bump into people in the corridor or on the way to the restroom, etc. You need to recreate some of that. And that actually keeps teams together. So very useful. Thank you. Move to the next slide if you could, Lidora. Now, we work in large networks. Again, if you go to the supermind.design website, you'll see what I mean. The dynamics of that network is the new way of working. Right? I can't say it in a different way. Our work is going to be looking very different compared to the work of our parents. So first of all, acknowledge that this is different. What we're doing now is different. Do not assume that virtual collaboration in large groups is something that you master. You've never seen anything like this. So you'll have a learning curve, and it will be faster if you acknowledge it and you learn proactively. 2, get some help. So for example, for large meetings, and especially if you are inexperienced, you should ask somebody to help you with managing the group and the technology, right? Especially, these large networks are a little bit of a beast, and they're very powerful, but you need to know how to harness them. 3rd, etiquette. This relates a little bit to the language thing that we're talking about. Doing virtual meetings in collaboration means, you cannot rely on auditory cues the same way as with meetings in person. So that makes the flow of a meeting potentially awkward unless you proactively drive the respect of simple rules. So for example, taking turns, speaking at the right tone of voice, making sure that you give each other feedback respectfully, being civil, etc. Etiquette is the next, is really a life skill. But also make it more entertaining and personal. Virtual collaboration encourages multitasking and distraction. So I don't know how many of you are really listening to what we're trying to do, but it's the nature of the beast, right? So virtual collaboration, I cannot, you cannot peer pressure people into listening. So you need to make it entertaining. You need to get people's opinion. You need to bring them in. You need to notice how beautiful their background is, or if they like or dislike their hairdo. I mean, in my case, you know what I'm thinking about it. So you must try to make a conversation and make it more participatory. Alternate the modes of delivery. Slides are toxic beyond the point. We have only a few slides today, but really you don't want to use slides beyond the point. I mean, unless people are really finding your slides awesome. If you find many of those people, tell me that we really want to work with people who just make slides awesome. But reality is people work with people, right? So make an effort to acknowledge people, their behaviors, and what is important to them. That's the way we communicate. And make it matter, right? We are human beings at the end of the day. We're not just a little picture on a screen. Then learn how to work your network. This goes back to the network collaboration that I was talking about before. Unlike in a physical space where you can walk around and meet people, managing virtual collaboration requires you to think proactively about the network of connection. And that's particularly important when your team is distributed, right? So you got to think network. You can't just think physical environments. And also the knowledge of the limitations of the tools. Virtual work relies a ton on technologies. Technologies can really give you superpowers if you know how to use them. You can really harness the collective intelligence of the people around the world. The reason why I wanted to do some of those polls is I don't know what people struggle with. And I really love seeing your responses. So there's no substitute for becoming familiar with the tools and asking for feedback. We'll talk about the tools in a second, but Lidora, can you do a small poll again? Same thing, which one of these do you do systematically when you work in a virtual environment now? Just give us your opinion. Go ahead on the poll and vote away. All right, so respected meeting etiquettes. I'm super proud, right? This is not trivial to do. And then, many of you guys know the limitations of the tools. That's great, and acknowledge that you're in a different environment. Getting help and learning how to work your network are two things. Look, one of the things I've discovered, as I progressed in my work, is that asking for help is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. Right? Do that and you'll become better. People will discover that you're orientated towards improvement, and that will be a good thing for your career. Also, learn how to work your network is, I can guarantee you, is going to be the defining factor for your career as you go forward in your work life in the future. So Lidora, last slide, and then we change things. And this slide is going to be a little faster. Manage technology. So you probably know a lot about technology already. There's a couple of things that are not trivial to do. Processing power of machines. When you do streaming videos, especially when you work with an office computer, which has a bunch of security mechanisms on top of it, you may run out of capacity. So you may want to consider using two devices, for example, one for audio video and the other one for sharing your things. Your bandwidth is probably going to be more resilient, but the CPU on your computer is going to give away faster. So make sure that you shut down all the non-essential applications, all the stuff that you do, all the browsers. Actually, these days, browsers use a lot of capacity. Close off everything and just use the applications that you need. Quality of audio and video, and especially audio, is the key. Right? I just bought myself an external mic. It hasn't come in time for this meeting, but audio quality is of paramount importance. Video, I think the video that we have by now is pretty good. You'd be surprised how often audio is really something that is not good enough. And ask people for feedback. So if you get a bigger screen, you will see that makes life easier. These days screens are not that expensive. It's the investment that keeps on giving. So move closer to the camera so people can see you a little bit better. Eliminate screen sharing when you don't need to. In this case, we've done quite a lot of screen sharing, but it's actually quite useful to see people in the face. Test and have a backup. Technology fails more often if you don't test. If you test, you actually figure out what the limits of technology are. And so, or if your counterpart doesn't test, if you work with somebody who doesn't use technology all that much, they need to test before they can really interoperate with you well. So spend a bit of time testing. This sounds trivial, and it doesn't sound like a very millennial thing to do, or even Generation Z. Test, right? If you test, after a while, things will actually go the way that you want them to do, to go. Find backup options, right? In some cases, what happens if Zoom doesn't work? Do you have a dial-in? Can you do something else? And you really want to, so if you go somewhere physically, you spend a ton of time thinking about, hey, I'm gonna do my luggage now, I'm gonna get into the cab, I'm gonna go to the airport. It takes 3 hours even before I get to the airport, into the flight. So why wouldn't you spend a half an hour if the meeting is important, really preparing and testing extensively, right? So we need to get into the mood of, there's nothing casual around remote collaboration. And so the more you test, the more you're buttoned up about that, the more people will appreciate the work that you do. Okay, so I think, Lidora, I don't think that we have any more slides, at least on my end. So maybe go to the next section. Thank you.
Thanks, Gianni. Let me move this stuff off my, got all these polls on my screen. Thank you everybody for participating in those. You want to go to the next slide? So what I wanted to talk to you about is really some tips that I have found over the years that are very, very beneficial, even in this digital world. So things that you can do to help you have a fantastic interview with a hiring leader. So first is research, research, research. I gave you some ideas earlier about where to find or how to find out about companies. Go in, read their white papers, figure out what they're doing, what clients they're selling to, what are they selling. Make sure that it's a company that you're interested in. Don't just think, oh, I just need a job. You want to make sure you pick a company that fits you culturally as well. So some of the things that I can tell you about is, since we're in a digital world now, and the majority of what's happening in our world is interviews via Zoom, you don't have the ability to sit in somebody's office and look behind them and see that they have a golden retriever in this corner and they have kids over in this corner. So you want to definitely try to still bond or connect with the person that you're interviewing with. So a couple of different things you can do is, you can definitely go to LinkedIn and you can look up our profiles. Most people that you're going to be talking to will have a LinkedIn profile out there, probably about 85%. You want to look for things that we're interested in. And if you looked me up today, you would see that I was on the board of directors for the past 6 years or 7 years for a dog rescue organization down here in Tampa, Florida, where I live. So you could take that information and then somehow weave it into the conversation to help connect with me when I would do an interview with you. So that's one thing you can do. The second thing is a fantastic tool that we have used here at Genpact, and you can actually use it for free for a certain number of people that you want to look up. It's a website and a company called Crystal Insights. And so Ladora, I don't know if you want to type that on the chat so they can know what that site is. But it's a very interesting site that you can add to your browser. I do believe it's Chrome. And once you sign up for your free trial, it actually gives you the opportunity to run a personality profile test on my personality or anybody else's personality. And it also goes into telling you how you need to email us. What's the best way to get our attention? What's the best way to have a conversation with us? So it gives you a lot of great tips and tricks on connecting and making sure that what you're telling us we're listening to, and it's an effective interview. So super, super important, and I love that tool. The second thing I want to talk about is language. So if you get on any reality television show, You'll know that a lot of the words in the younger generation, there's a lot of substitute words that people put in between their sentences. One of them is like, one of them is you know, and then the filler So those are really words that you need to try to remove completely from your day-to-day language, because when you do that, it actually sets you apart from your peers when we're talking to you. So I have two teenagers in my house right now, and that's how they speak, my daughter especially. And so I tell her now, if she's going to talk like that, I tell her, I'm not going to listen to that. I said, if you need to come in here and talk to me without using 452 likes in a sentence, because I get bored during the conversation with all of the filler words. So 10 years ago, I was at a monster.com conference, if any of you are familiar with that. And I remember having this same conversation with the thousands of students that were there at that thing, at that conference. So apparently it didn't get the word out, but we really need to take those words out of our language because they're just not effective when you're communicating with us. A great way to do this is to do a video interview of yourself. Have your roommate, your mother, your brother, your friend do a mock interview with you and video you. I know you're probably not going to like watching yourself, but it's the only way that you're going to know if you have any type of tics or things that you do during the interview. Do you shake your leg? Do you talk with your hands, which is very distracting on video? Obviously, we're not in an office if I'm doing an interview via Zoom. So take the time and watch yourself and see what you can improve upon. There's lots of things on YouTube about effective speaking and how to become a great speaker and how to get your words across and those types of things. So utilize those types of tools in order to become a more effective interviewee. Importance of nonverbal cues, obviously that goes into, videoing yourself. Make sure you have great, body language. You're leaning into the camera. You're interested in what we're talking to you about, or when you're answering questions, make sure you're looking into the camera, not down here at your computer screen, and always have a positive outlook. We know that, especially during these times, there's some tough days, but we do want you to, talk to us about, what you think is positive and have a positive twist to everything you talk about. Talking about companies that have, maybe that didn't go well or things like that, or internships that you did, and make sure you try to turn that into a positive. Be keen, research, clarify. Make sure you understand what the role is. It's okay to ask questions. I tell everybody during the beginning of the interview that it's not just about me finding out if they're a good fit for Genpact. I want to make sure that I do my job and that you understand what it's going to be like working here on a day-to-day basis. Again, I mentioned it before, you're not going to fit in every single company, and that's okay, but take the time to figure out what the culture is. The culture here, very entrepreneurial. Very entrepreneurial. And when I first came to this company, I'll tell you a little bit of a little tidbit. We were interviewing for a big insurance leader in the United States. We brought somebody on, never had worked in consulting, came from the industry, and very entrepreneurial. He hated it. 4 or 5 weeks into the role, he said, I can't do it. I have to go into an office every day. I have to have my person tell me exactly what my calls are going to be, exactly what my day is going to look like. So make sure you fit with the environment. And it's okay. There's a place for everyone, trust me. And that's about it. So we really appreciate you coming today. We hope you got something out of it. We hope you come back and talk to us again. And I know Ladora has another poll that she wants to run here.
All right. So thank you so much, Melissa and Gianni. This has been some very insightful details you all have shared. The chat has been going amazing. So hopefully right now you all are able to go take a quick look and see all the comments that folks have been making. There were some that really stood out to me. So hopefully you all will get an opportunity to check that out. So for the next question, we do have menti.com. So hopefully you see the instructions. We want to know, what topics would you like to see for our future webinars? So go ahead and give us your answers, because we definitely want to take this back to our team so that we can adjust accordingly. What do you want to hear about? What would you enjoy? All right, so I see the word cloud growing. Standing out in the crowd, resume building, work environment, opportunities. Okay. All right, so
Public
don't
speaking
hesitate.
techniques. I like
Yes.
that one.
Yes. Work environment, that's a good one. All right, so you don't have to stop now. Continue to put your different topics that you would find interested. Right now, we're going to jump over to Q&A. So here for Q&A, what I'll say here, we have several questions that have been submitted by the audience. Some have been submitted to my personal email. Others have been submitted through the Q&A bot. This is the opportunity for you to ask the amazing panelists questions. So you should see a Q&A chat box down below. Click there and enter your question. As a reminder, if you do have those questions, we'll take them in order, and we'll try to get through as many questions as possible during the time that we have. All right, so for our first question, this can go to either Melissa or Gianni. With information overload and the lack of separation of home and work are in many cases the persistence of work, especially prevalent at this moment. I've been looking at how I manage all the information. I'm taking in all the web browser tabs I have open at any given time. With the variety of tools out there like Google Docs and Evernote, how do you find where each of these best fit in our workflows?
I'm sorry, can you just repeat the last 5 words that you said? How you do?
Okay. How do we find where each of them best fit in our workflows?
Right. Maybe I'll take that, Melissa. Every company has a slightly different way of doing things. Different tools are used for different purposes, and sometimes they are misused. So some of it will actually happen gradually. So you'll see people moving away from email, for example, into chats, potentially channels in Teams or Slack, or synchronous communications like conference calls or video calls, etc. Part of it is just cultural. Some companies are much more synchronous, as in they want to see each other. Some others are actually happier with asynchronous work. I think the best way to do things is to really ask around, when you join a new employer, what kind of things go where, right? Every company, I can tell you, if you were coming to us, we have now a fairly sophisticated, we've actually been at this for many, many years just because of the distributed work environment that we have. We actually have a fairly sophisticated way of using a variety of tools. Some other companies may not be the same way, right? So, it's actually important that you get the sense from others, because at the end of the day, irrespective of what you think that the tools do, what matters, most of these tools are collaboration tools. So, it's about the other people. It's not about you, right? So if you want to find people somewhere else, you got to go to where they are, not where you are.
Right, thanks for answering that question, Gianni. So the next question that we have is, given the significant impact of this pandemic on our way of life, it seems like there will be no return to normal. Instead, there will be a new normal, just like how the world was different before versus after World War II. What specific differences do you see in pre versus post-pandemic world?
It's a good question. It's a big question. We deal with that. We actually talk about it. We have board meeting next week. That's going to be a part of that question. Melissa, maybe I'll let you answer in a second about how that's going to change the way talent gets engaged and gets brought into companies, etc. Because it, what we're talking about has a big impact. I'll tell you, I'm going to try to keep it maybe in 15 seconds or so. I mean, again, if you want to have more, go look at that supermind.design place where you have a lot of that explained. This is a big opportunity, right? So it's a big opportunity to actually build a world where we don't need to schlep ourselves, surrounded by like 2 tons of metal every day to go meet people so that we can talk to them, right? I mean, think about this. For 60 years, in order for people to be productive with other people, we had to really literally go physically there, like medieval Europe, people with a donkey would need to go to the next farm so that they could actually go work with the farmer. We still do the same. We have, metal donkeys, and they are more environmentally unfriendly, and we just do the same. So this is a real opportunity for us to unshackle ourselves from, it's industrial revolution, right? And the one thing that you don't want to change is how you create connections with people. How do you embrace our diversity and our ability to think about things differently and work with people to get better solutions out? And that, I think, if we do it well, it is a better future as well. Because right now, compared to before, everybody works distributed. So if I want to talk to somebody in Japan or in Palo Alto in the same day, it's a nanosecond, right? I can go and get them, and maybe they are exactly the right people I need. So that's a big opportunity for all of us. I also want to make sure that we don't go too dark in our thoughts. There will be a time in which we will be allowed out. There will be a time in which we will be allowed to hug people again, and outside of your household. And so that will come. But hopefully, the period in which we really appreciate the fact that relationships don't just need or must not have necessarily a physical counterpart. Hopefully we'll learn some lesson from that. Melissa, what do you think from a hiring standpoint, and how people get into the workforce?
Sure, Gianni, thank you. Obviously, at Genpact, we're a very digital company. So over the last couple of years, we've really transformed ourselves in order to, if I want Gianni to interview somebody, like he said, in Germany or Europe or something like that, we've really been moving towards that anyway. And sometimes I don't think you're going to, in the future, be meeting your manager face-to-face before you start working for them. And for some people, that might be a problem, or they might feel a little fearful of that. So you really need to think about how you can get those questions and answered, prior on doing it all on the web, doing it all over the internet, because you might not have that opportunity anymore for those face-to-face interactions until after you're onboarded at a company. And I really think that this is a great opportunity, like Gianni said, for us to put away those, metal donkeys and think about how effective people are now when they don't have to commute 2 hours each way, like into New York or something like that. That's 4 hours a day times 5 days a week times 52 days a year. I mean, what company wouldn't want to take, that opportunity at their fingertips? So I think, you're going to have some companies that are going to want to go back and do it old school. And then some companies they're going to continue to transform. And this is going to be the way that we do business moving forward, even recruiting.
And Melissa and Lidora, Lidora, I'll override you. I mean, this is actually what you get when you invite me for webinars. So, can I ask okay, so I put up a poll. I know I shouldn't do it, but I did. Can you guys answer this question? Because I think it tallies with what Melissa said.
The poll is up.
Yeah, poll is up on Zoom, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, keep going. Yeah. Yep. That's it. So we probably want to have a mix, right, Melissa? And here we only had 3 positions. I don't know if 50% is 50-50, or is it 70-30, or is it 30-70? But many people actually want some office, but they don't want all office, right? So that's what it says.
I think it's only if their kids at home that they want 50% of their.
That's a good point.
Of their office time.
Right.
I'm just waiting for my 5-year-old to come screaming in at any moment. So, so this is actually a really great question that we received, and I'm gonna it's from Melissa and Gianni. What actionables can employees do to affirm their boss or coworkers that they are highly reliable while working from home?
All right. Look, I manage, very large global, diverse teams. So there are a few things that I talked about before. One is try to manage people by objective. And if you are working on a team that is managed by objective, just make sure that you're religious about those objectives, right? There's nothing that really kills confidence in you as, the objectives were clear, but people went astray, and they really wanted to be managed by input, not output. Really, they would have wanted to have, every day somebody sitting with them and telling them what to do. Some people actually are a little bit like that, and that's the reason why, by the way, in some cases you need to do that, especially when the process of getting to the outcome is complicated. That's why when you do innovation work, for example, you use agile very often, or that kind of, you use design thinking, etc. But there are people who help you through the activities, right? But that's actually for specialized work for which the process isn't super clear. And otherwise, just manage people by objectives. So manage people by objectives and trust on them the responsibility to deliver the results. Make sure that you are accessible, and if you're working on that objective, raise your hand if you need help, what we said before. Otherwise, just create rituals and rhythms, right? Again, scrums, weekly sprints, etc. Those are all rituals that help people deliver. But one thing that you don't want to do is to breathe down people's neck, because that isn't, first of all, it's never been a good practice. But in a virtual world, there's no virtual neck, right? Beyond the point, people don't really respond all that well.
Perfect. All right. So Melissa, this one is actually for you.
Okay.
How do you best prioritize, or what would you suggest? How do you best prioritize time and effort between companies when preparing for interviews? What would you suggest?
So here's my thoughts on that. You have one shot when you interview with a company, and your first impression, you better make it the best impression that you can. So my answer to that would be, spend as much time as to where you feel comfortable about, the company, what's happening at the company, the role that you're going to be playing within that organization. Make sure it fits within what you're looking for. So I think prioritizing is really, really key, and spending as much time on investigation is paramount. if you want the role.
Right.
If you just want to practice, then you don't have to spend that much time. So I hope
Great.
that answered the question.
Yes. So this is one that someone would like for you all to explain the term white papers. They've never heard of this term before.
Gianni's probably written 100 of them. You want
Right.
to explain it?
I mean, when you're in university, you write dissertations. A white paper is the equivalent of that in our world, which is, it's not a research paper the way a scientific institution would do, but it's actually part of research that is done within a company that puts across a point of view. It's actually not structured incredibly differently from a dissertation, except that language is a little crisper. You need to enable people to read diagonally because many people don't have time. So that's a white paper. It's really a way of creating thought leadership and pushing the boundaries of the art of the possible.
All right, perfect. So here's another one. Thank you so much for this. They're part of an international research team / network at their university. It's very hard to relate to some of their peers from other cultures through virtual interaction as compared to face-to-face meetings. Do you have any advice on how to meaningfully network and appreciate their cultures virtually?
Yeah, look,
This is a great one.
welcome to my world, right?
As you all can tell, Gianni has a pretty thick accent.
Well, I mean, also Melissa, I mean, you've been around for some time here with us, so you'll have a perspective.
Absolutely.
So, do you want me to go first, or you want?
Go ahead.
It's hard, but it's the best thing that can happen to you in a work environment, right? I'll just put it at that. Before joining Genpact, I was in global companies. I worked for software companies, large software companies, but they typically had a very strong, 2-3 countries were dominating. And, the moment you go, for example, I used to work at SAP, it was, US and Germany, really mostly. And so, the moment you get both of those, you get it, right? What soccer teams, or football teams, you get everything. In our environment is a lot more diverse, and I think everybody makes an effort to kind of get to some common ground, right? Mm-hmm. And that makes it really, really powerful. Because the problem of diversity is that at the beginning you don't understand each other, and maybe it takes us some time to understand each other in terms of the soft stuff, right? Punctuality or quality, output, or all the managerial things. But in exchange for that complexity, which by the way over time goes away, you get perspectives, right? It is, especially hard challenges cannot be solved with uniform, homogeneous, the white man kind of things, right? I mean, with all due respect to white man, one of them, but you need to have diversity. You need to have that really polarized set of opinions. And when you get that done, it's great. So I think the answer is just be curious, be open, be tolerant, pick up on the cues that people send. Also, you can learn about it. A bunch of our trainings, for example, are about that, right? What do people mean? But also be able to yield, right? The one thing that doesn't work in companies like us is people come in with a preconceived notion of what good is. And then they say, well, this is what good is, right? I mean, this is what we do in this country or that country. And that doesn't fly, right? Mm-hmm. And that actually is a surefire way of, people not rooting well in our system. Whereas if you yield and you really try to create environments where there's a little bit of the best of everyone, then you really get fabulous solutions. And actually a work environment that frankly is much more fun, right? People come up with crazy stuff. You do every day, you discover things, and it's a lot more fun. And it's the world, right? At the end of the day, the one thing that we don't want in this pandemic is that everybody goes back to their own little castle and they believe that that's the world. The world is a big place, right?
Yes, it is.
And so Melissa, what do you think?
So the last part of the question that Joshua wrote was, how do you have any advice on how to meaningful network and appreciate their cultures virtually? One of the things that we've been doing at Genpact, because a lot of obviously our teams have moved to work from home, is we do things that aren't associated with work. What about if you started a book club with these peers that you want to create more time with, and pick a book? Be the driver of these types of things. Why don't you try to do some type of Friday or Saturday happy hours? So if you want to connect with them outside of the university, these are some great things that you can do to help ease you into understanding what makes them think, what makes them tick, and understanding their cultures and the things they like and dislike, and ways to bond with them, other than just school.
Right. Thanks for that, Melissa. So the next question that so I actually really like this one.
Okay.
How do you not get discouraged while job searching, especially in an environment like this?
This is a very challenging time. I won't, sugarcoat that, this has affected not only, students that are graduating from school, but this is also affecting, people that are obviously have roles. And then for those of you who are newly graduating and looking for new roles, I think one of the best things you could do at this time, if you're unable to find something in your field, is do something. So fill that gap in your resume with volunteering or getting a job. Maybe it's not the job of your dreams. Maybe it's, handing out food at a food bank, but do something. Don't just sit and not do anything, because when this turns around, which as we all know, eventually it will, it might be a new normal, but it's going to turn around. When we're looking at your resumes, we want to make sure that, you fill that gap. So Gianni, I don't know if you have any other.
No, I think you're exactly right. I mean, one thing I would say is this is a good time to still invest in yourself. I mean,
Yes.
Life is long, don't get despondent. This saying that, the great success is not determined by how good you are, but how many times you get up once you've been put down, right? And this is one of those, right?
And I wouldn't look, if somebody was graduating, they graduated last week, and I know there's some people on the call and there was no job and you had to go work at a Starbucks or a Home Depot or something like that. We're fine with that, because you need to provide, you need some, obviously money to live on. So those are things that you have to do in these tough times.
That's definitely fair, Melissa. So here's one. How do you think the financial industry will adjust after this pandemic?
I'm going to let Gianni take that one.
Yeah. It depends on how long this pandemic lasts, but financial industry compared to where we were 10 years ago is much more solid environment. So I actually am not incredibly worried about the resiliency of the system. I think what is going to happen is the way work is going to be done in those organizations is going to be very different. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you listen to all, main banks, big banks, investment banks, and wealth management, retail banks as well, a lot of it is going to be partially remote, right? Now back to the question, you're going to have investment bankers working from anywhere. You're going to have, the work that we do for banks is going to be done a lot more from various places, including, home, right? And look, not all of the processes are such that you really need to be in a super scrutinized environment, in a physical office environment. By the way, machines actually create security. So I think that industry has been particularly traditional in the way work was done, as in physical spaces and kind of maybe hierarchical structures. I think that's going to be a good thing, right? This is going to create a lot of creativity in the mix. So So I think it's going to be ending up in a better place. Again, hopefully we don't break the fabric of economic society, which is, people who need to provide for their own families. But a lot of the things that we are being forced to think about will, will make the world a better place, including for banks.
Perfect. All right, so we'll take one more question. What is the best possible change to the consulting industry you see resulting from this pandemic/work culture? So from a consulting industry, what do you all see?
And what is the best what? Sorry, I can hear the word.
What is the best possible change to the consulting industry you can see resulting from this pandemic/work culture shift?
Right. Look, I've been a consultant for many years. It was a time in which I liked traveling. I like that space. I don't like the traveling anymore. I have 2 kids. I have 2 daughters, 12 and 14. I want to spend time with them. I see them in the morning when they wake up. It's not that I spend a ton of time in the morning, but I see them and I say hello. And then even consultants will be able to do that in the future. Think of how good that world would be, right? Even our own people, yeah, we will go and do meetings, but you can do a lot of stuff and you still have, your kids around, or you can, go to the pub with your friends. And, it's going to be a better world, right? I think that's actually a big change. What do you think, Melissa?
Hands down, it's going to be the travel. Thinking that you have to get on an airplane to go and meet somebody face to face on Monday morning, I think that's going to change. This is forcing us to push the world to digital. And I hope that we all take advantage of that, including our clients and our prospective clients.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Melissa and Gianni, for all of your insight. Just wanted to, for our last few minutes, cover a couple of things. So I'm going to do my very last poll of today. And it's just simple. And just give me 1 second. I'm pulling it up here. Rate this webinar.
Shelley, why? I know, Shelley, you had the question about the white paper. I posted one in the chat. If you want to grab that link, and it'll take you to one of the white papers on the Genpact site, or for anybody else who wants to see.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Melissa.
Case study, whatever you want to call it. You're welcome.
All right. So based off of the poll, it looks like 91% enjoyed this and they can't wait to our next webinar. So for now, I'm going to just stop sharing these results and I'll just share some last minute details. Our next webinar will happen in 2 weeks. How Genpact is building business resilience. This will take place on Friday, May 29th at the same time as today's session. You can now register for those events on Eventbrite as well as Handshake. We also will share a free guide on how to ace your virtual interview. And last but not least, please follow us on all social media platforms. Again, thank you all for your time, and we can't wait for you all to join us during our next webinar. Have an awesome day. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Stay safe.
Stay safe, everyone.
Be well.
Bye.